I'm not sure there's a moment that sums up a certain kind of life lesson better than seeing your ex, the one who left you for someone richer, standing on your doorstep, crying, holding the same suitcase she walked out with 2 years ago. That's where I found Chloe just a few months back. I'd literally just hung up from a call with investors. We were talking an $800,000 deal to expand my agency nationally. I opened the door expecting a delivery, and there she was. Makeup smudged, hair in a messy bun, looking utterly broken. She didn't ask to come in. She just started talking, a torrent of words about how Liam had broken up with her, called her too demanding, too high maintenance. How she'd made a horrible mistake leaving me. I just stood there, leaning against the doorframe, listening to this practice speech about second chances and how money doesn't buy happiness. To understand how we got to that surreal moment, we need to rewind a couple of years. Chloe and I had been together for 3 years, living in a decent 2-bedroom in Atlanta, Georgia for the last year and a half. I was a digital marketing manager, making about $78,000 a year. Stable, comfortable. Chloe worked part-time at a boutique in Midtown, maybe $26,000, always talking about career courses but never really finishing any. I drove a 2018 Mazda 6. I paid most of the bills. My evenings? They were spent building a side consulting business. I wanted more than just a steady paycheck. Chloe, she liked nice things. Expensive brunches, designer bags she'd save up for, weekend trips to Napa Valley. And I didn't mind covering a lot of it. I thought we were building something real, together. The cracks started subtly. The kind of things you notice, but tell yourself you're overreacting. She'd come home from networking events at 11 at night, smelling of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. When I'd ask about her evening, she'd get defensive, call me paranoid. She talked more and more about the successful men she'd meet, their luxury cars, how they invested in themselves. My buddy, Ben, saw it before I did. Bro, he'd say, she's shopping around, and you're just the safety net while she tests the market. I just brushed him off. I loved her, and I believed she loved me. I was working 12, 14-hour days between my job and my side business, trying to build a future. But she'd complain I wasn't present enough, always working, even though the money I made was largely funding the lifestyle she wanted. Then came the night everything shifted. I came home around 8, after a client call, Thai food in hand, her favorite. I found her at the kitchen table, hands folded, a weird, formal energy about her. Her expression was serious. I knew, before she even spoke, that this was rehearsed. Caleb, she started, we need to talk. I put the food down, sat across from her. She launched into a whole speech about doing a lot of thinking, how we wanted different things. She said I was safe, stable, but she needed someone who matched her ambition, someone who could provide the lifestyle she deserved without worrying about money. Then, the line that's etched in my memory. She looked me dead in the eye and said, I think we're better as friends. Like she was doing me some kind of favor. I sat there, processing. And it hit me. She wasn't leaving because we weren't compatible. She was leaving because she'd found someone with more money, trying to make it sound noble. I could have argued. Begged. Promised to work less, or make more. But instead, I just said, okay, if that's what you want. She blinked. Like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Her face went from serious to confused, then almost angry. She clearly expected a fight, a breakdown, some dramatic movie moment where I'd realize what I was losing. Instead, I just asked if she needed help packing, or if she had somewhere to go. Completely calm, like we were discussing a work project. She said she'd stay with a friend, pick up her stuff over the weekend. I said that was fine, I'd make sure I wasn't home so it wouldn't be awkward. That confusion on her face deepened. Frustration, maybe disappointment. She grabbed her pre-packed suitcase from the bedroom and left without another word. I sat there, the Thai food getting cold. And instead of sadness, I felt this weird sense of relief. Like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had suddenly been lifted. That night, I opened a spreadsheet. Calculated how much I'd been spending on her monthly rent, food, entertainment, trips. It was around $1,400. Money that would now stay in my pocket. Money I could invest back into my business. The next morning, I went to work like nothing happened. Because honestly, nothing had really changed, except I didn't have to pretend anymore. Ben called me at lunch, asking how I was doing. I told him I was fine. He seemed more confused than anything else. He kept waiting for me to have a breakdown, show up drunk. It never came. I just threw myself into work. Both my day job and my consulting business. Within 2 weeks, I landed my first major client, a $15,000 project. Something I couldn't have focused on if Chloe was still around. I remember sitting at my desk after closing that deal, looking at the contract, thinking that losing her might genuinely be the best financial decision of my life, even if I hadn't made it on purpose. She texted a few times, asking how I was, hoping we could still be friends. I kept my replies short, polite. I'm good. Hope you're well. That's about all she got. And I could tell she didn't like it, judging by how she kept trying to extend the conversations. Ben would occasionally show me her Instagram. Pictures of her at fancy restaurants, new designer bags, a new guy's arm around her shoulder in every third post. Clearly flaunting her upgraded life. I didn't follow her. Didn't check up. Didn't care. I was too busy building something real, something that was mine, something nobody could take away by deciding I wasn't ambitious enough. I remember the first time Ben sent me a screenshot of her with her new guy. I was at my home office at midnight, working on a proposal. Ben's caption, "Bro, check out your upgrade." It was her at some rooftop restaurant, champagne in hand, leaning against a guy in a tailored suit. Liam Sterling. He looked like he'd stepped out of a finance bro starter pack, designer watch, perfect hair, that smirk that screams, "I have money and I want you to know it." Her caption was something about finally being treated right, with hashtags about luxury lifestyle and knowing your worth. I looked for maybe 5 seconds, sent Ben a thumbs up, and went back to my deadline. Her validation posts weren't paying my bills. Liam was 32, worked in investment banking, drove a BMW M5, lived in a luxury high-rise downtown. Mutual friends, the gossip chain, couldn't help but fill me in. They'd met at one of those networking events Chloe used to come home late from. Ben's theory was she'd been lining him up for months before the better as friends speech. The math checked out. She didn't leave me and then find someone better. She found someone with more money, then manufactured a reason to leave. It was wild to watch her lifestyle change so fast. Within a month, she went from part-time boutique work to basically a full-time Instagram influencer, whose content was all, "Look at this expensive thing my boyfriend bought me." From splitting appetizers to omakase dinners that cost more than her old monthly paycheck. From saving for one designer bag to a collection that grew weekly. From my Mazda to private car services. Ben analyzed it like a financial consultant. She's not paying for any of this. She's just traded one ATM for a bigger one. And he wasn't wrong. She'd found exactly what she said she wanted, someone to provide that lifestyle without her having to think about money. And according to her posts, she was living her best life. Meanwhile, my side business was exploding. That $15,000 client turned into 3 more referrals. Suddenly, I was pulling in $8,000 to $12,000 per project, on top of my salary. I was working insane hours, sometimes 14-hour days. But nobody was complaining I wasn't present enough. I had freedom. Freedom to build something without someone constantly measuring my worth against other men's bank accounts. My apartment stayed clean. My fridge had actual food, not just expensive takeout containers. And that $1,400 a month? Straight into business investments and savings. About 3 months after the breakup, Chloe started reaching out, subtly. Texts late at night saying she missed our conversations or sharing old memories. I kept my responses the same, short, polite, emotionally detached. Yeah, that was nice. Hope you're doing well. I wasn't being mean, just treating her exactly like what she'd asked to be. A friend. And that, apparently, wasn't sitting well with her. The messages became more frequent, more pointed. Then, the 1 a.m. call from a club. Music blasting. Her words slurred. She was out with Liam but bored, thinking about me. I was in bed, actually getting decent sleep for once. I just lay there in the dark, listening to her ramble about how different everything was now, how she missed our simple times. When she finally paused, I told her she should probably go back to her date, and that I hoped she had a good night. Then I hung up. Ben thought it was hilarious. He said she was realizing money doesn't buy personality, and Liam probably bored her to death. The real shift happened around month 6. I landed a contract that changed everything. A company wanted me to handle their entire digital marketing strategy, $80,000 upfront, plus performance bonuses. They wanted to discuss a yearly retainer. 2 weeks later, I quit my day job. Moved to a better apartment in Buckhead. Suddenly, I wasn't just grinding in the shadows. I was the guy other people in my industry were talking about. My income basically tripled overnight. For the first time, I felt like I was building the life I wanted, not just surviving or proving something. That's when Chloe started showing up. It was too frequent to be coincidence. I'd be at a coffee shop I'd never been to before, and she'd walk in 10 minutes later, acting surprised. Or I'd be at a networking event, and she'd appear with Liam, making sure to stop by and chat like we were old friends. She'd compliment my new watch, my new clothes, ask about work in a way that screamed she was fishing for details about my income. Liam would just stand there, bored, checking his phone. I'd keep everything surface level, polite, then excuse myself. Ben started calling her a financial stalker. It wasn't far off. The most blatant incident? She found out which gym I joined. Suddenly, she had a membership there, too, showing up during my usual workout times. I'd see her on the treadmill, facing the weight section where I was. Or she'd coincidentally need the machine right next to mine, always starting conversations about how crazy it was we were both there. After the 3rd time in a week, I switched gyms entirely. Didn't tell anyone. Paid extra for a membership across town just to avoid it. What struck me was how transparent her motivations became. She didn't miss me. She missed the version of me I was becoming. The one with money and success, who could give her validation without her relying entirely on Liam. I was supposed to stay the struggling guy, the safe backup option. But I'd upgraded myself. And that wasn't part of her plan. She wanted me stuck where she left me so she could feel better about her choices. The fact that I wasn't stuck, that I was thriving without her, seemed to bother her more than anything. So, when she was standing on my doorstep, crying, holding that suitcase, she was still operating on old information. Still thinking I was probably single, struggling, and would be grateful she came back. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she talked, like she was doing me a favor. I was about to tell her it wasn't a good time when my phone rang. It was Ben. I answered it right there in the doorway while she stood waiting. Ben was calling about celebrating the investor deal. He was loud enough that Chloe could hear him talking about the $800,000, asking if I'd picked up the Mercedes yet, or if I was still driving the Mazda. I watched her face change in real time. The recognition hit her. Something fundamental had shifted. When I hung up, she asked directly if what Ben said was true, if my business was really worth that much. I told her honestly that it was doing well, better than I'd expected. The energy in the conversation flipped. Instantly. She wasn't the apologetic ex anymore. She was practically vibrating with manic energy, talking about how she'd always believed in me, how she knew I'd be successful, how we could be so good together now that we were both in better places. She started touching my arm, leaning in closer, saying Liam never understood her the way I did, how money didn't matter anymore, she'd learned what was really important. I just stood there, watching this performance. This complete transformation from sad and desperate to calculated and opportunistic. And I realized she hadn't learned anything at all. She hadn't learned that money doesn't matter. She'd just learned I had more of it now. And that made me valuable again, in her eyes. I told her straight up that I appreciated her coming by, but I wasn't interested in revisiting what we had. I'd moved on. I was happy with where my life was now. She tried to argue, said I was being unfair, everyone deserves a second chance, she'd changed, grown. I pointed out she'd shown up with a suitcase the same day Liam dumped her. That if she'd really changed, she would have reached up months ago when I was still in my old apartment, not right after finding out about my success. She got defensive, her voice rising, accusing me of twisting things, saying she genuinely cared, this had nothing to do with money. So, I asked her directly, if I'd still been making $78,000 and driving the Mazda, would you be standing here right now with that suitcase? She couldn't answer. Just stood there, opening and closing her mouth, trying to find words that wouldn't prove my point. That's when she started crying again. But this time, it felt different. More angry than sad. Her voice got loud enough that I saw my neighbor peek out. She accused me of being cruel, of holding grudges, of never really loving her if I could shut her out like this. I stayed calm. Told her I wasn't shutting her out. I was just treating her exactly like what she'd asked to be 2 years ago, a friend. And friends don't move in together. Friends don't get back together after messy breakups. She actually laughed at that, a bitter sound, and said I was petty, that I'd regret this when I realized how rare real connection was. I told her I'd found real connection with someone who didn't need me to prove my worth with a bank statement. That seemed to be the final straw. She grabbed her suitcase, told me I'd changed, and not in a good way. Ben showed up 10 minutes after she left. I told him the whole story while we sat in my living room. He pulled out his phone. He'd actually recorded part of the argument from the hallway. He'd arrived right when she started yelling and wanted evidence in case she tried to spin some story. We watched it back. It was surreal, seeing myself stay so composed while she spiraled. Ben kept pausing it, pointing out moments where you could see her calculating, trying different angles. He said I'd handled it perfectly. Some people only value you when they think you're valuable to others. And Chloe had shown exactly who she was, twice. Once when she left, and once when she tried to come back. 6 months later, my business hit $3.2 million in revenue. I'd moved into my house. Picked up a Mercedes E-Class. Sophia and I were planning a trip to Europe. I heard through mutual friends that Chloe had moved back in with her parents after burning through what little money she had. Working at a call center, posting vague things about finding herself and learning hard lessons. I didn't feel bad for her. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt grateful. Grateful she'd left when she did. Grateful I'd never begged her to stay. Grateful that sometimes, the trash really does take itself out, giving you the space to build something better than you ever could have with dead weight holding you back. The real lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about understanding that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. When you focus on building yourself instead of chasing validation, you attract the right people naturally. The ones who left for the wrong reasons become irrelevant. Not because you're bitter, but because you genuinely moved on to something better. What do you think? Was I too harsh?